Hello, I'm Lloyd Moyer. Today I thought I would make a couple of my ring stands. I have some blanks of ash that are ready to go to be made into any kind of little end grain projects. And I often make these little ring stands, which are literally just a little pop for your ring. Usually go next to your sink or your lathe, anywhere that you want to put your ring temporarily, but you don't want to take it all the way upstairs to your jewelry box or something like that. So I'm going to make a couple of those, and we'll see how we do. Okay, so I have these few blanks that are ready to go right into my chuck. And the first thing I'm going to be doing here is just rounding out the bottom end of each of them so that they will fit into the smaller chuck. Notice this is a good, it's perfectly fine. The chuck holds these perfectly fine because it's gripping around all the four corners. I'm also not bringing the tailstock up here because I'm going to be working on the ends, so it wouldn't do me that much good. And then I have my dividers that are set for the diameter of my smaller chuck that's going to hold these when they're done. So put my ring on the ring stand. We're going to start off slow, and then we're going to speed it up here. Going about 1500. I'm going to start with my skew chisel. Just a peeling cut here to get the corners off. And maybe I will actually go all the way down, or ways down. Again, a peeling cut is not a scraping cut. Scraping would be down here. You have the back of the handle raised up a little bit so that you really are actually, peeling the wood rather than scraping it or slicing it like I am here. Not quite rounded. Also, just a good time and a good way to practice your skew chisel work. If you're like me, um, there are lots of people that are old pros at skew chisels and they don't need any practice. I'm not one of those. I always need to practice. Just evening up the end there, although I didn't especially. Still a little bit uneven. Now, I've said this before and I will continue to say it. When you're setting when you're using the dividers, left hand, the end closest to you makes contact with the wood, and you want to line up that line with the right hand side without touching the right hand side to the wood, because if you catch that right hand side on the wood, it gets swung back at you pretty, not going to say violently, but it's not gentle. Now you want to have some kind of either a ridge or a divot or something to locate the jaws in when you come around here to flip it around into the other jaws. So I'm going to do that in just a second. I just want to take my spindle gouge here and just make this concave, just a little bit concave, so that it's sure to sit on the outside edge. There you go. Good enough right there. I think maybe on this one we'll have a little bead. Maybe a little bead and a little ruby. Maybe. One of the things I like about, well, turning in general is that you get to make design decisions sort of on the fly. So as I'm making this, a design element will occur to me and I can just run with it. I'm not beholden to any kind of a specific design. I think it's why this particular art form appeals to me, because I'm generally indecisive and not good at following instructions like that. Just rounding off the corners there a little bit. Now, I'm just going to take a bunch of the weight out of this. Actually, I'm going to do this with my larger spindle gouge. Probably do not need all the height that is in this at the moment. But sometimes I like to make them big and dramatic. They don't all have to be tiny little chess pieces. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna getting ahead of myself. I'm gonna sand this. It's just the bottom part where the chuck is gonna be. This is just 180 grit. I'm going to say don't be afraid to try starting with a higher grit sandpaper. If you got a good cut, don't be afraid to start at 180 grit or even 220 or 240. At the same time, if you didn't get as good a cut, don't feel ashamed about having to start at 120 or 100 or even 80 if that's what you need to do. I think that trying to get to a proficiency of turning where you can start at a higher grit sandpaper is a good thing to strive for, but don't rush yourself. Like, you'll get there. And if you nobody gets there every time. Um, so just do what you need to do. It's a good goal, though. I have my rag here that's actually an old sock that's filled with oil and wax. walnut oil and beeswax is what I generally use. I use walnut oil because it's food safe, and it is not that you need a ring stand here to be food safe, but I like to make all of my pieces safe for contact with food, and I intend them to be used. So I don't have other finishes lying around that are not food safe. I don't have any use for them. So I like walnut oil because it's food safe. But it's a nice matte finish. It still feels like wood, um, which there are lots of matte oil finishes that are, you know, mineral oil still looks like wood. Tung oil, it still looks like wood. But the advantage for me with walnut oil is to the untrained person, actually, yeah, it still smells like wood. Even if it smells like walnut and it's ash, like this is, the untrained person, it still smells like walnut, which smells like wood. So I want to show you what I just did there because it's kind of important. Hold on, let me just thought it pulled out a little bit. So I wasn't really paying attention to what I was doing. And what happened was I was turning along and I'm cutting with the bottom half of the skew chisel here. But what happened there was as I got down here, I sort of drifted down a little bit because the tool rest is not adjusted properly. I drifted down a little bit and I started cutting with the top half of the skew chisel. And what happens then is this top end catches in here. Boom, 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 just like that. That's how you get a catch with a skew chisel, is you hit the top corner. Not catastrophic. It can be. It can be a really, that's usually a really dramatic catch, and I think I just lucked out. Why we practice, and it's why part of why I'm doing these is I think it's good to see somebody who does this. If you're trying to learn how to do it, it's good to see somebody who does this and has been doing it for 30 years. I know I look way too young to have been doing this for 30 years, right? But I've been doing this, actually, I've been doing it for uh, not quite 48, and I've been doing it since I was about 15. Um, it's good to see guys that have been doing it, or people that have been doing it for a long time, screw up. At least it's always encouraging to me to see somebody that I know is better at this than I am mess it up. Gives me confidence. That, my friends, is why we generally don't adjust the tail rest with the lathe running. Hits just keep on coming today, huh? So again, just a peeling cut getting down to the diameter. So that it'll have a shoulder. And I think I want this to have kind of a large base that's going to round over. And I will need, I'm just going to put a little ridge, maybe a couple of little ridges. Again, so that the chuck has somewhere to locate. There you go. And again, just taking some of the bulk out of this. Little projects like this are really useful for design and um, sort of um, honing your skill at making a clean cut and an even curve, things like that. Because they're small, every little bit makes a difference. Every tiny little curve or cut makes a difference. Got to make sure that's concave. It is. How each curve relates to the one next to it. That was 180. I'm going to get a fresh piece of 220 here. Really like the cloth backed sandpaper, but my local, not local, my trusty supplier of sandpaper was out of the cloth backed 240, so I had to go to my local hardware store and just get what they had, which was this stuff. It's fine. It's important to not try and make your sandpaper last longer than it should. Like you don't want to cut with your gouge or your scraper or your skew chisel after it's dull. You don't really want to cut with your sandpaper after it's dull either. The way I just wrapped this around here like this, it's very important to not wrap that rag around your hand at all. Not around your finger, not around your hand, because it's very easy for the rag to get caught on the wood and get pulled into the spin. If it's wrapped around your finger, it'll take your finger with it. Okay. And I think since this is going pretty well, I'm going to do a third one. At least I hope it's going well. I hope it's being enjoyed. Ring stands and these little projects are great if you sell your work also. They are they're not great art, but they're useful and they're easy to buy. And they're a great introduction to. I usually price these at about $10 or $15, which if you work the craft show circuit at all, this is not quite tight enough. If you work the craft show circuit at all, you know that the people that really have a lot of success are the ones that have some little thing that can, artists, painters have prints, photographers have prints. The jewelry makers always seem to make a killing because they have, as well as their fine jewelry stuff, they have $10 earrings or $20 earrings, whatever. So I wanted to have something small that people could take home easily. Um, and the reason I say it's a great introduction to you is, you know, it, they have it. They know who you are. They remember you. And so if they want something bigger or prettier or whatever, um, they already know somebody who works in wood. They already have made a purchase from someone who works in wood. So when they have that tree come down in the backyard and they want to make it into things for the kids, for the grandkids, for Christmas, you remember the guy that we saw? I say guy. Remember the person that we saw at the craft festival? Let's call him. We have his business card. Let's call him and see if he can make something out of it. I've gotten many commissions that way. It's also something that people can buy very easily if they want to carry something of yours in their store. Um, oops, forgot to do the end here. Um, I have, I've had people. Um, Actually, there's a store in town here that carries my magic wands. They're a wizarding themed store. It's really fun. But the guy saw me at a craft fair and said, "Gee, do you make magic wands?" And I said, "Yeah, actually, I do. I had a couple of them with me." And he was like, "Could you make me some of these to carry in my store?" Which, of course, I could. But it was a good commission. He didn't want 5 of them; he wanted 30 of them. This is just a way of me saying that the little stuff is a great entry. You know, don't discount it or discount the importance of it. Maybe I'd give this one a little bead. When you're making a bead, I think the most important part of the bead is what the bead sits on. And you want it to look like the bead is sitting um, on top of the wood surrounding it. So you want the wood surrounding it to be the same on both sides of the bead. Not always as easy as it looks. It also is sometimes fun if you make both sides go in just a little bit. So it looks like the bead is actually tight around the surface and squeezing it in a little bit. That's pretty good. Tell me that's all chewed up. It's a little bit chewed up. That's okay. All better. 180, 220, and 320. Okay. And then I'm just gonna, again, take some of the weight out of this. Since I have the slightly more robust chuck holding this right now. This is a one-way chuck that I'm using right now, which is, it's actually an excellent piece of equipment. I mean, one way is kind of synonymous with top of the line wood turning gear, which anybody that knows, I love my yellow monster here, my Powermatic chuck, or my Powermatic lathe, but it's one way is sort of considered the top of the line of all things wood turning, and this chuck certainly doesn't disappoint. It's not inexpensive. I think it was in the neighborhood of $300, but it's absolutely worth it. That being said, all the other chucks I use are record power chucks, which are entry level chucks. When I first started turning, the first chuck that we got was a record chuck, and so we got several of them, and I don't have any complaints about the record chucks. Actually, if I had one, it would be that the difference between fully compressed and fully expanded is not much. The one way and like Vic Mark chucks, you have a huge amount of expansion that you can open up very wide and very go from pretty small to pretty big. Record doesn't really have that, but other than that, they're well done. I have no complaints, and there's a huge number of jaws that you can get for them. So let's see here. I think I might try and get a different camera angle here. Oh. That one's just a little bit too small. Let's see if they're all a little bit too small. Yeah, they are. That one's a little too small. This one's not. This one's okay. The other ones I'll have to, oh no, it is a little small. All of these are, oh no, this one's okay. Oh. These are all just a touch. I was a little bit too accurate. What's happening here? Nope. A little bit too accurate. So I'm going to have to do a little, actually, maybe it is more my dividers were not quite accurate. So what you can do in this situation is you can take a little piece of non-slip cloth, what I always call, what I've heard called non-slip cloth. I use this like stuff that you put in your drawers, like your silverware drawers, things like that. So you can put that in here. Just like that. That will take up enough space so that you can actually hold your work. Yep. So note to self, gotta open that a half a turn. All right, I'm gonna see if I can find a different camera angle. I'm gonna try this one. It's sitting right next to me. So I don't know if it's gonna work or not, but I like it, so we're gonna try it. So I'm putting this in here and I'm just gonna cut away some of the excess here so it doesn't get in my way. I've also, because I'm using the non-slip cloth, I brought the tailstock up just for a little added security, just to be on the safe side. Tighten that a little bit. Doesn't feel like turning. Oh well, I don't need it to be tight. I just need it to be, you know what I want to know is if that, no, we're fine. I was checking to see if the tail center pushed the work into the jaws more. This is not entirely natural for me, I must admit, because the camera is sitting right where I would be standing. Getting a little far away. Maybe I'll try doing it with my opposite hand. I never learned what right-handed and left-handed was in wood turning. So when I was very young, like a year old, I had an accident and I cut off part of my right index finger, just a little bit. And so I learned how to do a lot of things left-handed. But as I healed and learned how to do things later, I learned how to do a lot of things right-handed. So I'm not really ambidextrous, but I'm pretty comfortable with both of my hands because I had to be. And so in wood turning, I never really noticed what was right and what was left. Getting a little bit too high. You know, I'm gonna back this up just a little bit. I think I can back it up. Sorry, I'm doing this in real time, and I'm gonna just see if I can, there. See if that makes it a little bit easier for me. Let's try the skew.
Really don't need to be using the ski for this, but it's really good practice. And as I've said before, I can use the practice. So the way I usually design these is you have a ball on the top. Really does it generally looks like a chess pawn. Where's my In this particular case, I'm using the tail center, so that's going to come down. So that's going to get removed. So something like that. And then this part just becomes a taper. You have to be gentle here because you don't want to knocking into the camera. You know what? I'm going to try. Hold on, just a minute. I'm going to try and raise it up.
See if that's any better.
I was saying you have to be really gentle here because although the a spindle is very, very strong lengthwise, um, when you get small, it'll still break. So you have to not put a whole lot of pressure on the wood. Your pressure needs to go onto the tailstock or onto the tool rest. And also, if you're smooth here, which I am, don't be afraid to hold on to it. You're cutting it pretty smooth. So if you're supporting it with your fingers, the wood isn't bending. Okay. I'm going to back the tail center off here, and I just have to cut this little piece off. See if I can do it without breaking the rest of it. Actually, I'm going to do it with my spindle gouge. Just have to be gentle, that's all. See if I can get this down a little bit smaller. It doesn't need to be super small. You don't want it to be too delicate. I think that's good enough. When the diameter gets really small like this too, um, keep in mind my tail. All right, tool rest out of the way. Keep in mind that um, the wood here is spinning a good deal faster than the wood down here. So you have to take extra time in both sanding and cutting to make sure that you get a clean cut there because the wood is moving slower. You can also have a lot of fun with the design of these. This is where um, it can be fun to do if you ever do off-center turning, which I've done a couple of times. I don't do a lot of it, but um, you can have a little bit of fun with a ring stand off-center turn. Maybe I'll try that in a future video. Um, or any kind of you put whatever beads or whatever design elements you want on it because it's not as long as the basics stay right. Oh, I've got some tear out there. All right, gotta go and fix it. While I was sanding, I was like, oh, I didn't turn this off and check it to make sure it looked okay. Little chip right there still. All right, this is gonna have to get rounded over, I think. That's a bummer. Actually, no, let's just take it back. How's that? That's fine. Sorry, you can't see there. Next. Maybe one of these
I won't be able to get in here just quite straight, and we can play with that because that's sometimes a challenge. I think I have them all pretty good as far as locating the chuck locating on the workpiece. So it's not that one. That one that one is pretty even. Bring my tailstock back up again. Again, this really is just sort of like a security blanket here. It's, it keeps the, at least in theory, it keeps the piece from going that way to then pop out. Sometimes it still finds a way, but I think we'll be okay.
Just have to be gentle. I find that to be the case in spindle turning all the time. Just be gentle. Because you're, especially in spindle turning, you're generally, not always, but generally working with smaller pieces. So gentle is always better. I mean, really, in all art and craft and artisanry, I think that gentle is always better. Maybe in life, gentle is always better. I don't know. For me, an hour spent wood turning is better than most other hours I get to spend. Certainly not all. So I don't mind taking my time and being gentle, getting something done right, That's not to say I never mess up. Bad day at wood turning is better than a good day at work. And that's coming from someone who really does enjoy his job. One of my little pieces of personal philosophy is they say if you truly love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Not true. Some days it's still work. Some days you just want to stay home and watch The Price is Right. I'm a child of the 80s, so I have wonderful memories of sick days and The Price is Right. I never remember being sick, but I remember getting to stay home from school and, for whatever reason, sitting on the sofa watching The Price is Right. Some days, just even this part of my job, and I do think of wood turning as a second job for me. Um, there's some days where you just don't feel like it, and that's probably good. They say variety is the spice of life. think I'm going to mess with that anymore. Very gentle. 180 grit. Keep hitting the no-stick cloth there. .220 grit. And 320. Dropped my sandpaper. Okay, excuse me. Oops. This one's giving me a little bit more trouble than the others. Let's see. No, that's still loose in there, you see? So what I might do with this one might be fun. I think I'm going to try making a jam chuck for that. So I've changed chucks, and what I have here is a piece of cherry, sort of an off-cut piece of cherry that fits into my chuck here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn a recess in there that this will fit into. So first I'm just going to true this up.
Okay. Now I'm going to get my guilty dividers here, and I'm going to set the diameter here of my ring stand. You know, part of doing this is solving problems, you know. Sometimes, some days it feels like all there is to it is solving problems, but that's a little bit small, but that's okay. I don't mind starting small. And then I'm just going to back hollow this out a little bit. That should be, might want it a little deeper than that. Okay. Now I'm going to get my scraper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this with a taper. Right? So starting here, I'm going to go in towards the middle for starters. A little too small, which we knew to begin with, right? Now you take my word, that's going to be too big, and I'm going to have made the taper too small. See? Don't for a minute think you're dealing with a professional here. That's okay. That's part of doing this, though. You know, you mess it up, you just start over again. Back to too small. And yes, this can be a tedious process. Goodness. There you go. See this little burnish mark? That's where it fits. So what I'm going to do now is, well, first I'm going to reduce this a little bit. And then we're just going to go, sorry, my tail center's in the way here. I'm just going to go straight in on this line. Actually, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to make it a little bit deeper. And I'm going to pause this. Sorry, I just wanted to sharpen my scraper. Let's see how close we are. Still a little tight. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, why don't you just give up on this one? Again, little burnish mark there. Why don't you just give up on this one? And to be perfectly honest with you, if I wasn't filming, I may have done just that. But I feel like this is a good thing to see. Not just me messing something up, but which I always think is good, but also to see. So you see that there are different solutions to problems, you know. There's my mallet. You're a wood turner, you should have a good shop mallet. You know what's going to be fun? It's getting that back out again. And get it out like that. Just going to give this a little bit of sand. A little sanding right here. Perfect. What I mean by what I was starting to say was I think it's a good idea that those of us that are putting these videos up don't just show you the things that go right. Like I always think it's important, at least when I'm watching, I want to know how you deal with the things that go wrong too. So that sound that you're hearing is that's the wood squeaking around itself. And I actually want to have this. It's not quite. I think I can get it even, more even. Yeah, that's better. So again, I don't need the tail center to put any pressure on there, I don't think. We'll see if it pops out. I really just need it to keep it from coming out. Which it just did. This is actually me not being good enough making these kind of jam chucks. Maybe I can do a better job here. Maybe.
There, you're getting to see me get some practice in too.
That's just right. That's how I want it. Just like that. Wasn't quite deep enough.
Now, like I said before, gentle is the key. And I know that doesn't mean I'm always successful at being gentle. This one, I just want to be able to get to this whole thing. I'm going to give a little, I'll give a little ridge in there so that when it's time to take it out, I can grab it. I think. I'm going to try that anyway. Maybe we'll do a couple. Or two. Little catch there. I think that's enough. So if all goes well, these things can be very, very quick. And yes, I realize that's a big if. Um, I also think about it in the aggregate, like this one took a while, but the other ones were quick. So it's not a real big deal. This one continues to be challenging. I feel like I'm a little bit small at the top of this here.
I'm gonna get a little bit closer. And see if I can get under it, which I can.
That's good. Okay. See if I can get this little nub off of here without breaking the thing, because that would be about, seem to be about right for this one. Okay. And I'll leave it at that. Got a little bit of a ridge right here at the base of the curve that I decided not to mess with um, anymore with the skew chisel, because you're not chickening out if you do it with sandpaper. I mean, like with most things, there are limits, but no shame in taking a difficult spot like that needs just a little bit of softening and soften it with the sandpaper. There's nothing wrong with that, or at least not in my book. And if there's something wrong with it in your book, there's nothing wrong with that either, because or I'm sorry, if there's something wrong with it in your book, then there's nothing wrong with that either, because it's your book. You do it however you want. But for me, I'm fine with softening edges that I need to soften with the sandpaper sometimes. Especially when it's been a challenge-ridden item like this. I don't mind not tempting the fates any more than I have to. the really bad catch or the hole in the bottom always lives in that one more cut. I'm just going to take one more light cut here. Bam. I think I can go just a little bit deeper in the bottom here. Nope. At least that's the way it always seems to happen to me. All right. I like the way this one's turning out. It looks a little like a evergreen tree, which was not my intention, but
Now, who wants to take bets that I can't get this thing out of the chuck without breaking it? You would be correct. Now, if I need to, I can just turn that whole thing away. But I'm trying to not do that. Let's see if I can do it like this. Yeah. There we go. 3 little ring stands with a little bit of challenge thrown in.